Hi, I'm Leon, and welcome back to another group review. Today, I've got three pistols that have been ingrained in Nerf's history for really good reasons. And, bonus, these guys are actually all still available. So, let's take a look at them. So, these three pistols, despite their age, have been around in the hobby for a very long time, especially the Strongarm and Hammershot. And the bonus is they happen to just be getting re-released pretty constantly, actually, when a bunch of different new colors. This is one of the Hammershot's offerings, which has been regularly available on Amazon. The Disruptor comes in a couple of packages, and so does the Strongarm. So hey, good news for us nerfers who really like the old stuff. These are all still available and all fantastic. So, starting off with kind of what makes them similar and why they're all here. These are all in this group review because these are pistols that many people rely on. The Strongarm, most famous for being the rehash of the Maverick in the Elite line, is still around and still very reliable. The Disruptor, fixing some issues while creating some others depending on who you are. It's basically the Strongarm, just with a whole different kind of, different profile, I'll call it. And the Hammershot, some of the most famous of pistol activity, comes from the Hammershot, which was the zombie strike gun, and it's still around. Very interesting. You can see that the ones on the table are rather worn. Stuff is fading, paint is kind of fading away, especially around the grip. The Disruptor's the newest of the bunch, so this one's still been around almost as long as they have, but this one's not really fading too much. And you can see that the Hammershot, yeah, it's got a lot of sort of dings around it. But I wanted to talk about these blasters like they are now, because these have seen more wars than I can count. And I'll tell you which one's the most popular among my players, but I'll also break it down for you real quick. So, let's go ahead and start with everyone's favorite six-shooter, the Strongarm. The Strongarm is sort of one of the most famous Nerf guns, at least for the time. It is a six-shot revolver that primes like this, and you can go ahead and fire. And it's pretty simple. Sling mount here, so you can actually prime it off of something. And it has been praised for its just overall reliability. To load, you can go ahead and pop out the cylinder. That's going to be this button on the side. That'll allow you to pop out the cylinder almost all the way, lets you free spin it, and lets you go ahead and just load in whatever dart you feel like. These aren't too picky with darts. Push cylinder in, prime and fire. Doesn't get much more simple than that. Or does it? Yeah, the Disruptor. The Disruptor makes this blaster even more simple. It's still that six-shooter. It's still got the top slide, and it still fires like normal. But instead of having to pop out the cylinder is actually integrated into the blaster. So you can go ahead and put a dart in, rotate the cylinder, and fire. Yeah, they fire pretty well. Truth be told, the Disruptor fixes quite a bit of issues that the Strongarm has. So, while this isn't a head-to-head, I will put them head-to-head real quick and just discuss them, but there won't be a winner here. First, I will say that the Disruptor actually fixes a very big issue that I have with the Strongarm. These shapes on the priming handle poke you a little bit. It's not unpleasant the first couple of times, but if you're using this in a game as sort of like your main pistol and using it pretty constantly, you will definitely feel that. The Disruptor fixes that issue by having no shapes along the side and just a way more comfortable priming handle, in my opinion. This is super cool. Both do have slam fire, so if you hold down the trigger, rack the slide back, hold down the trigger, rack the slide back. Both are going to fire on the slide reaching the rearmost position, so that's pretty cool. The Disruptor's got a sort of weird sling mount at the bottom here, and a weird sling mount here, while the Strongarm has sling mounts in more traditional places. The Strongarm is just kind of more fun. I think the Disruptor is a very let's get down to business and not do a lot of stuff extra. The Strongarm does have that extra cylinder, which most people have been using for Nerf Russian roulette, but it works. You can spin the cylinder, flick it back in, prime it, have a good time. It gives you a lot more freedom with how you want to approach it and just feels a little cooler. The Disruptor, however, is a purely let's get down to business and let's just play with an effective pistol. So, truthfully, if you're looking for something that just doesn't have any kind of flair to it and just is reliable, the Disruptor is probably a decent pick. Although we'll talk the Hammershot in just a second. But that doesn't mean the Strongarm is bad. It just so happens to have gotten an update with the Disruptor. I still like the fact that the cylinder pops out and you can go ahead and spin it and put it back in. If you like doing that, the Strongarm is still, they're basically the same. And they are the same internal-wise. It's just, if you like that mechanic of the cylinder being able to pop out, then go with a Strongarm. If you don't, and you just want something that is purely functional, the Disruptor. Hey, doesn't get much better than that. The Hammershot came out in 2013 under the Zombie Strike line instead of the Elite line like these guys. That's Elite, not Elite 2.0. And the Hammershot has been a mainstay in a lot of people's arsenals and pockets and holsters and whatever else you can make ever since. This is a 5-shot hammer action cylinder blaster. So to prime, you got the hammer up here, you pull that down, and now it's primed to fire once. Yeah, pretty simple. Honestly, the Hammershot's one of the most reliable blasters. And the extra skin I have for it seemed to have this really amazing seal. Like, look at that. That's incredible. And if I go ahead and load a dart, it does rotate on prime and fire. It's really, really reliable. Not that this one isn't reliable, but this one just happens to have a better seal, but this is a lot older, so can't hit that. But yeah, Hammershot's pretty simple. All of these blasters have a rail on the top for whatever attachments, and I think they're in the perfect place. Although I do like, the Maverick isn't here, but the Maverick's rail is here, which does feel kind of cool, like an RMR sort of thing if you put a hollow point on it. But regardless, the rail's in the perfect spot so it doesn't impede your prime, so you can aim really well. Although for holster ability, you probably won't be using that rail for anything at all, really. But yeah, Hammershot's fun. It's a nice little cowboy kind of aesthetic with a sling mount here, and maybe you could use this as a sling mount. The other thing that's sort of different between the other two is it's only got 5 shots. Okay, so all is good. Well, let's talk one last thing. The Hammershot is a one-hand blaster. The others, unless you maybe have a sling mounted to sort of prime it off of you, you need 2 hands for it. Yeah, you could definitely twist it around and like put it on things, but at its core, the Hammershot is a one-handed blaster. And yes, you can dual wield pretty well. Hey, can't hate that. So, if you don't happen to be running slings, and I know a lot of, especially casual nerfers, aren't using slings, the Hammershot might have to be your go-to. It takes the all-business sort of perspective that the Disruptor has, but gives it one less shot, but gives it that one-hand ability. So, let's just assume this is my primary. Hand it to my other hand, draw my pistol, take care of a couple of shots, put it back in my pocket, go back to my primary. The Disruptor, you have to sort of sling your primary, Disruptor and Strongarm. You have to sling your primary, take care of a couple shots, put this back in your pocket, grab your primary. If you're running a sling, I don't see why you wouldn't be using a Disruptor or like a Warden or something else. But if you aren't running a sling, you might want to look into the Hammershot just because of the convenience of running a blaster like this. So now that you've seen me kind of break them down, let's go ahead and see them fire. Alright, famous pistols, starting with the Strongarm and some chili darts. The Disruptor. This one does not have a pop-out zone. fun? Let's do a wheel. So, right now, these blasters will not be available in any retail stores. They haven't been for a very long while, I would say since 2020. So, that's 4 years. And in the case of the Hammershot and some other stuff, that's a really long time. However, recolors of all of these blasters, and sometimes some of the main colors, like I think this is still available, and I know this is still available, and maybe the regular Disruptors too, these are all still available on Amazon. And they all come at around different price points. The Hammershot being around 15, and the Disruptor and Strongarm I keep seeing for 10, but I want to also say 15. So, in truth, you can honestly make the decision on which one you want to pick. But as for these, there's quite a lot going for them. If you're looking for a reliable pistol, at all in the slightest, these three would be my go-to. That's including stuff like the Commander and the X-Shot Skins Griefer and the single shot stuff that's up. These are your functional pistols that are available right now, at least in the present. Truthfully, you're going to want to pick these up sooner than later if you're into these at all. I will say that I've seen Disruptors and Strongarms available at thrift stores. I haven't run into any Hammershots while thrifting, but I'm sure they're there. The Disruptor is probably the most common blaster I see while thrifting, and I tend to always pick them up because they're like ridiculously cheap, but they're also really reliable. The Disruptor is probably a blaster that you can hand to new players who are looking for something very small, compact, or just like a simple pistol. They say, here you go, this is how it works. Yeah. So let's go into sort of my critiques, since I normally critique blasters here. So I'll start with the Strongarm. Not a fan of the priming handle. If you're going to be using this blaster for extended use, not a fan of the priming handle. And I don't really like those shapes that jut out at you. You can certainly get away with it depending on how you prime it, but I'm not a big fan of these shapes here. And I can definitely say the reload is slower because of this extra action. However, if you're choosing between the Disruptor and this, it's if you like doing that or not. This feels cool, so I'm not going to hold that against the Strongarm. The Disruptor, I don't really have too many flaws with. I will be partial to the Strongarm because I like the flip-out mechanic, but I've really got nothing to say on this blaster for critiques. I think it is an all-in-one package and a very compelling secondary/sidearm if you just so happen to be looking for it. I don't have any notes on this blaster. By comparison, the Hammershot does feel a little weaker than these two, and you can see in the firing demo, although my Strongarm is old, it's still shooting a little harder than the Hammershot, which is also old. But, in truth, I like the Hammershot the best. Maybe it isn't perfect, but it just so happens to have that nice little one-hand draw that lets you clear sort of whatever threat might be engaging you, and 5 shots to do it. I really like that. I've started to use slings back in my own Nerf wars, but before I used slings, or even for pistols-only game modes, I would grab a Hammershot or a Trailblazer, just because these felt really reliable. They feel like they play no games, and they allow you to sort of make that decision and just take care of whatever threat might be bothering you, while keeping your other arm free for whatever you might need. It is a really, really, really compelling secondary for that reason, because it's just that one-hand ability. So, you'd know which one I'd pick, which would be the Hammershot, but what about you? Well, if you're interested in any of these blasters, I've left a purchase link in the description below. I will say that you're probably going to see the recolors available, but you can also surf Amazon to see if you can find anything cool for like the Hammershot or the Disruptor or the Strongarm. I promise you there are recolors available, some in red, some in clear, just a whole bunch of things, and they're all going to be relatively cheap to pick up. These are all going for around 10 when they're on sale. The Hammershot seems to only dip to 13 to 15, so do keep that in mind. But that's going to be everything. I hope you like what I do around here, and if you do, feel free to like and subscribe, and leave a comment letting me know what your favorite pistol is. I know I've got a favorite, and it's the Hammershot. But that's going to be all for this review. So, as always, take it easy.